Hello, smart people. How are you today? I want to tell you about a conversation that I had recently with two early stage founders. And they're both really clever people, but they haven't yet left the big corporate jobs to launch their startup. So they're kind of new to this game. And I've been in their place, so I totally understand the mistakes that they're making because, frankly, I've made them too. So, anyway, they've built a consumer app and it's a pretty cool idea, actually. They're about to launch and everything is ready to go. And so I asked them, so what have you done about marketing so far? And they said, well, we've got a web designer, we're changing the name, and we can get somebody to work on the logo. And I thought, oh God, oh no, you're going to be in real trouble because this is basically what a lot of people who've never really done go to market properly, they think marketing strategy is that a pretty logo, a catchy name, a nice looking website. But have you ever bought anything just because it had a pretty logo? Sure, I like the Apple logo, but that's not what makes me buy their product, right? I like their products because they solve problems, because they're sleek, because they integrate seamlessly. Like I'm so in the Apple ecosystem now, I'm probably never going to get out. The user experience is exceptional. The best apps come out on Apple first, and so on. The logo is just a logo. Sure, if they had a horrible logo, it would be kind of weird for Apple, but that's not what makes me buy stuff. And here's the thing, there's a core difference between how traditional businesses and tech businesses view marketing. Pillar one, know your Mrs. Valeria. Okay, I'll tell you who Mrs. Valeria is. Basically, you need to know who your target customer is, and you have to know this in great detail. So, I've heard some people say our target customers are busy professionals aged from 25 to 45. That's really not specific enough because they could be very, very different people. So you need to imagine a person, a specific person with a name and habits, and essentially imagine who they are. And this is inspired by the real life Willy Wonka. And the real life Willy Wonka, he actually exists. And he's a multi billionaire. So, of course, I'm talking about Michele Ferrero. He is the founder of Ferrero Rocher, and that's the maker of Nutella and Kinder Surprise. And basically, this man has brought so much joy into my life. So I'm really glad he's a billionaire. And when he first started Ferrero Rocher, he talked about Mrs. Valeria. And so Mrs. Valeria was the customer that they were making products for. So he was always thinking about, okay, and literally, I learned about this company and they have this chocolate experimentation department where they just create delicious concoctions. Anyway, so in this chocolate experimentation department where they're making amazing things, they're always thinking about Mrs. Valeria. So would she buy this? Does she like this? What does she think about this? So essentially, they know what she values and what problems she has and how to speak to her. And so my question to you is, do you know who your Mrs. Valeria is? And actually, here's an example from one of our students whom you would have heard from her just a few episodes ago. Her name is Noor. She built a tech product for small retailers. And when she was building this product, she didn't start off by saying, I'm going to build something for all retailers everywhere. She literally started by targeting, she was a small retailer. She had 3 small retail shops and she had a specific problem. And you can listen to the episode that we had with her to understand her story. But essentially, she had a problem that she was experiencing as a retailer. She then spoke to other retailers she knew who had the same problems. And so she ended up creating a product. And as she was creating a product, she was kind of co-creating it with the retailers that she had in her network. So she knew their pain points, she knew their budget, she knew their workflows. And essentially, that means that when she launched, she already had a bunch of people who were ready to use her product. And she was able to grow really fast because she wasn't trying to be everything to everybody. And she had a really crystal clear picture of her first customers. And you might be thinking, well, this sounds really small, but I have big plans. But to have big plans, you need to start small first. So now her business has expanded to serve other types of customers. But first, you have to start with one specific person in mind. So basically, if you can't describe your target customer in vivid detail and what they're doing on Tuesday morning and what frustrates them, what they care about, You don't know your market well enough yet, so go and get to know it. Now, pillar 3. Where are you going to find your Mrs. Valeria? Where is she hanging out? Where are you going to find your target user? And critically, do you know how much it's going to cost to find her? Because if it's B2C, you'll probably find your user hanging out on the Meta platforms or TikTok, and that's great. But that's really expensive. Have you budgeted for that? Do you know what your do you know what your customer acquisition cost is going to be? Because let me tell you, around 40% of the money that B2C app founders raise from venture capital goes straight into goes straight into advertising. I mean, why do you think Mark Zuckerberg is so rich? Because founders like you are buying ads from him. And I mean, also me. So we're buying ads from him, and your business model has to work with that. If you're building B2B, it's a different story because you're not going to run TikTok ads for enterprise software. You're going to basically, the beginning, have to do sales yourself. And if you're doing sales yourself, then my question is, do you know who you're going to approach? Who's the buyer and who's the user? Because often in a corporate, they're going to be different people. So maybe you have a junior employee who's going to love your product and who's going to really want to use it. But the person who signs the check is the CFO who's never going to use the product. And essentially, you need to prove to them that it's worth their money. So if you're only talking to the user in a corporate, you might not get the sale. So basically, think who your Mrs. Valeria is and how you're going to get to her. And what is it going to cost you in time, in money, and in effort to reach her? Okay, pillar 5, timing and market readiness. Do you remember when during the pandemic, basically everybody started using Zoom, and Zoom had existed before, but the Zoom boom really happened from 2020 onwards because the market was suddenly ready. So then basically think about this. Why is the time right for your product now? Why will customers care about this problem now? And what has changed in the market that makes this problem really, really right for your product today? Because basically, if you're too early, or if you're trying to educate a market that doesn't even know it has a problem yet, that's going to be difficult for a startup. So big companies do that because essentially they have big budgets and they can afford to do that. If you don't have a lot of cash, that's going to be a problem because we don't want you to spend a lot of cash trying to convince people that they have a problem in the first place. They should know that they have this problem, and then it's just a question of convincing them to use your solution. And if you're too late and everybody already has a solution that they're happy with, then you're going to struggle to get people to switch. So basically, ask yourself, is the market ready for what I'm doing? Or am I going to have to drag them kicking and screaming into caring? Or, yes, the problem exists, but is everybody quite happy with what they've got? Because you could build a super, super great product, but if everybody is really happy with what they've got, then it doesn't really matter.